Ahoy and hello everybody. It will be wonderful to be with you now and celebrate the 20th anniversary of the McKenzie Institutu Czech Republic. So congratulations to Eva, Misha, Mirek, Marketa, Lida and all the supporters of the Institute. Great job, well done, and all the success for the next 20 years. Unfortunately, I'm in a car right now, so when you watch this video, I will be on my way from the German Pain Congress back home. So I can't respond to any questions right now, but you can ask Eva everything you want and you need, because she knows everything anyway. And the real hard questions you can actually direct to Mirek, because he knows everything better. So enjoy the presentation. I have some questions for you, and they're all about why. So why do you put on a jacket? Yeah, that's easy. Keeps you warm. You don't freeze. So that makes perfect sense. The next question. Why do you eat? Yeah, that's also quite straightforward. We eat because we are hungry. That's easy. Yeah, but is it that easy? So why do you eat? Here's the same question. Is it just about being hungry and not starving? It's nice to have some of these macarons with some friends and taste so great. So it seems not that easy, but is why. And here's another question. Think about a good friend. Male or female, doesn't matter. Just a really good friend. And ask yourself, so why are we friends? Why are we friends? It's much harder to answer this question, isn't it? That is because the first question and the second one was more about one half of our brain. It's about analytical and logical stuff. And the other one was more about feelings, emotions, creativity. It's much harder to put this in words, actually, and to bring this all together. And here's the next question. Why do you use MDT? So to answer this question, are you more on the left side about the jacket and the meal? Or is it somewhere in between with these macarons? Yeah, you like them. Or is it more like talking about friends? Is it a bit harder to actually to phrase what we think about that question? To answer this question, are you more on the left side with to put the jacket on, not to freeze, or just eat, not to starve? Or are we moving more to the middle with the macarons? Yeah, it's food, but it's not just to stay alive. We also enjoy food. Or are we on the right side, thinking about friends, people we admire, actually? On the left side, we should have a look at the evidence, which is maybe supportive or also unsupportive. And to be honest, it's not that supportive. We come back to that later. So, or are we just thinking about our experience? There are so many anecdotes we can share. We have so many great results with our patients, and we share our excitement all over the world. So many people are really crazy about MDT. They love it, and we love it. And of course, we can look for some supportive literature, and we will find it. So here's my question for you. Why do you use MDT? You. And so please take 5 minutes and tell your neighbor, so why do I use MDT? I use MDT because, and try to put it in 1 or maybe 2 sentences. So Mirek, Eva, or whoever, please stop the video now for a moment and then start it again after 5 minutes. So people should now really discuss. So stop the video and discuss. Okay, I hope you stopped the video and you really discussed. I can't control it here from here. So I think it was a nice discussion, wasn't it? So how did it go? Where have you been? On the right side? Great teachers, great team, and you have all these great experiences on courses, sharing your success with your colleagues. And then of course you can quote some supportive literature. And it's so good to be with people who share the same excitement as we do. It's just wonderful if people like what we do, isn't it? So read this, please. Maybe it was Mark Twain, maybe not. Yeah, it's wonderful to have these people around. But to be honest, it's really about their opinion should be the same as ours. It's getting a little bit tricky if it's not the case. Yeah, it's wonderful to be together with people who love what we love. And of course, if we dig a little bit deeper, we can find support for what we do. Also in the evidence, there are plenty of studies showing how great MDT is. Just all the principles, they are supported, reliability, validity, and all the stuff. Yeah, great studies. Perfect. And we have tons of research on centralization. It's the McKenzie phenomenon. No one has any doubts about centralization. Great, we have that. Here's a little experiment for you. Think about red wine. And now do the following thing. Think about the pros and think about the cons of red wine. So think about what is good about red wine and what is actually a negative aspect here in red wine. And immediately, if you start thinking about this and maybe discuss it with your neighbor, I got you. Because on the left, I'm sure the ones who have all the positive aspects of red wine, they really like red wine. They like it. And on the right, maybe you don't like red wine or you don't like alcohol at all. And of course, either of you is searching now for supporting arguments. Yeah, that's it. And what we just saw is confirmation bias. So we have a certain idea, we are convinced of an aspect, and when we look for facts about this, we don't look unbiased. Actually, we are quite biased because we're not only looking at the facts, we also take into account our beliefs. And when we look at this, there's a lot of evidence we might ignore because we have our beliefs, and we might only expect or accept the evidence we believe in as our evidence, as our supporting evidence. We call this confirmation bias. So, and that is actually happening all the time. It's happening in our life, makes life easier. And it also happens with us as clinicians, in our daily life as clinicians. So we tend to look for the supportive stuff. But what we already like, we look for information that supports what we like. And that is human nature. Because if we look at the whole situation about MDT, really when it comes to the evidence actually does not tell us that we are superior. MDT is not superior. The systematic reviews, they never show that we are any better than other approaches here. And there are not enough RCTs. And always when there is another systematic review coming out, it kind of shows the same. There's no big difference between the approaches. It seems that no one has the solution for musculoskeletal problems. So MDT is not superior So sorry for that, to tell you this. So we have to question ourselves, and I questioned myself this some years ago. I questioned myself, so if MDT is not superior, if we look at all the evidence and we find it's not any better than any other approach, so why am I doing this? Why am I a McKenzie guy? So why do I use MDT? Why do I use MDT as a clinician and as a teacher? So I'm a clinician now since more than 30 years, and I'm a teacher for MDT since more than 20 years. So why am I still doing this? So, and you can scan this QR code and you will find an article I wrote some years ago, and I just updated last week. So, and you don't have to write anything down from this presentation because it's all in this article. So scan this QR code and it brings you to a PDF of the article. Because I listed some of the arguments in favor of MDT, why I use this, and I really want to share them with you. So can you think about this situation? Have you had this in your daily clinic already? The patient just came in time. So we know that natural healing is so good. So if you would have come one day later, it would have been too late. Pain would have gone anyway. But it's not that easy. It's not just about the patients who get better by themselves. It's also about the patients who might have a serious disease, a serious pathology. And one aspect, and a really important aspect, is that we are able to find these when we use our MDT assessment. It's a structured assessment process, and Brian Sørensen showed in 2011 that the McKenzie assessment is really valuable in detecting red flags and detecting indications for serious pathologies. So number one, it's safe. It's really safe to do this. That's a good point, isn't it? When a patient comes to your clinic, usually he or she wants to know, when will I get better? So what is my prognosis? And when I was working in the US in the late 90s, after 2 sessions, a guy from the insurance company called me and asked, Georg, what do you think, how many sessions do you need with this patient? So he asked, or she asked, for a prognosis for this patient. And here's the good thing. With MDT, we are able to talk about prognosis because we have great indicators like centralization, directional preference. Wonderful. We can talk about prognosis. At least we are able to define or to find patients who will respond well, who have a good chance to get better. So we can actually talk about prognosis. We can say quite quickly, can we help this patient fast? Will it take longer? Or can't we help this patient at all? Prognosis, good thing. In 2018, I was teaching in Africa, in Malawi, which is number 4 of the poorest countries in the world. In Malawi, with 18 million people living, and at that time in 2018, there were just less than 100 physical therapists. So that's really not a lot, yeah? So think about this. If you are successful as a PT, that's great. And let's say if you need a certain amount of treatment sessions, yeah, that's good. But what if you would need just a little bit less treatment sessions? And Daniel Deutscher and his team, they found with more than 20,000 patients that clinicians who use the MDT method or who are trained in MDT, they need less sessions, they need less treatment sessions. Now you could say, yes, 7 versus 6, that's ridiculous, isn't it? No, it's not. Just thinking about Germany and last year and the costs for physical therapy. If all patients would have seen an MDT clinician, the German health system would have saved 400 million euro just with one visit less per patient, per treatment episode. That's quite a lot of money, isn't it? And it seems that, and Mark Warnecke and Daniel Deutsche showed this also in another study, that if you use MDT, you need less treatment sessions. So it seems to be efficient. Also, back in the late 90s, when I worked in the US, I saw a patient. He had 4 lumbar surgeries. 4 surgeries. He was a chronic pain patient. And he told me once, Georg, you can't unscrew my back. So he was really totally disappointed, and he was kind of desperate about the whole situation. So you can't unscrew my back. This anecdote made me aware of how important it is that we, by any means, try to avoid surgery. We can't unscrew our patient's back. And here's the good news. So plenty of research from our Dutch colleague Hans van Helvoort, and also from Rasmussen from Denmark, showed if we use the MDT approach, we can avoid surgery. We can avoid injections. We can avoid taking too much medication. So we can avoid harm for our patients. Many patients get better on their own anyway. So it's good to avoid harm for them and not let them go through dangerous procedures. So can we prevent musculoskeletal pain? And the biggest issue is back pain. So can we prevent back pain? So the key to prevention from our perspective is a balance in daily life, a balance between loading and unloading, between flexion and extension. And it makes perfect sense theoretically. So how is that when we look from a research perspective? The Campos and colleagues, they did a wonderful study in 2020. They asked 262 former back pain patients, so they did not have back pain for the last half year. They asked them to come to an appointment, and they randomized them to 2 groups. One was the MDT group, and these patients, they didn't have back pain for the last half year. They had 2 assessment sessions with an MDT clinician, and in these 2 sessions, about 45 minutes each, they talked about how to prevent back pain, what to do in daily life, and when you flex a lot, you should extend. When you extend a lot, you should flex. In some situations, you might use a lumbar roll. It's just about the MDT principle of keep your spine in balance. And so it was mostly about this idea of teaching these patients how to keep their back in balance. The control group, they received a phone call from an expert, and this expert was talking with them about general health, not about specific strategies to prevent back pain, just general health, nutrition, activities in general, all the stuff. And they also received a booklet, Get Back on Track, from the Australian National Health Service. And after 1 year, the Campos and his team, they looked at the rate of recurrences. So how often did these patients have recurrences of back pain? How often did the back pain come back? What they found, there was no difference at all. There was no relevant difference in the recurrence rate. So most of them got back pain, or some of them, actually most of them, I guess, most of them got back pain the next year. That's disappointing, isn't it? No, it is not. Because when you look at another aspects, the co-interventions, in the control group, we had 210 co-interventions during this year. It means people had to see a doctor, a chiropractor, a physio, had to go to the pharmacist, take some medication. So they saw a healthcare practitioner in 210 co-interventions. In the MDT group, we had only 153 co-interventions. So it seemed that the people in the MDT group, they were able to manage their issues by themselves, which is a great thing. And one of you who are a physical therapist for a long time, they know it's really hard to kind of avoid back pain. It will come. So it's good if we teach people to manage it by themselves. So keep calm and do it yourself. That is what we found, what they found in their study. So it's great when you can treat yourself. So treat yourself. That is another aspect, self-treatment, to prevent back pain or to manage back pain that comes back. This is Gwendolyn Joel. She's a world-renowned expert in musculoskeletal health, and she's one of the the high-brainer in our profession. In 2016, she wrote a great editorial for musculoskeletal and science practice for the journal, formerly known as Manual Therapy. She asked the following question. Yeah, is it logical that we make such big differences between the spine and the extremities? It seems that we treat them quite differently. Does it make sense? Do we have to have a spine brain, one brain for the extremities, and then maybe also one for acute or chronic pain patients? And what about ordinary people and athletes? So how is that? That is a common perception. So we need experts for every part. And that's rubbish. That's really rubbish. So in the MDT principle, we can use one brain. We bring it all together, actually. So with this system, we can treat and we can assess and treat extremity patients, spinal patients, the chronic ones, the acute ones. And we know since a few years that we can also treat athletes. So some of you might have been to Mirek's wonderful MDT in the athlete class, or mine some years ago. It's great, we can do that. MDT covers the whole body. That is really a big advantage, I think. Thinking about brains, we just mentioned it. Sometimes it's really good not to use only one brain, but to connect more brains. And this happens when a team works together and we can exchange our experience, when we can discuss patients. And this is actually a great thing with MDT. We all talk the same language, so we can really exchange this, and we can discuss patients, and we can add to each other with our knowledge. It's a great basis for teamwork. It facilitates teamwork. In 2020, we published a study, and some of you might have seen my presentation in 2019 on the Czech Congress in Prague. So do patients with low back pain remember physiotherapists' advice? We asked. And most of you might know the results already. This was one of the statements one of the patients gave us. And just look at the bold words. We checked together. We found which movement is good for me and which one is not. In this study, we found that the active clinical examination was such an important issue when it comes to communication, when it comes to does a patient understand and remember what we tell them. Shared decision making, and shared decision making not only in the treatment process but also in the diagnostic process. We involve the patient already in the diagnostic process. Usually it's like that. So when it comes to therapy, we might ask a patient, do it or do it not, or maybe we give different options. So in MDT, we use another approach. We evaluate together what's up, and then we can decide together with the patient, so how to go on with this. The patient is involved from a very early stage on. Shared decision making. It's kind of a hype term in the last 5 years or so. MDT is doing this since the late 50s, actually. And just talking about our study about do patients remember what we tell them. So there was one assumption that, okay, this was an easy study because they mostly gave directional preference exercises and they are easy to remember. Yeah, they are, because they're simple. But in our study, we found that only 47% of the patients in our study were given directional preference exercises. And there were other strategies we used for our patients. And all these strategies went well, and patients understood well because they were involved in the process, shared decision making. So shared decision making is another issue, another point here. When it comes to musculoskeletal therapy, there are great concepts out there. There are great methods out there, strategies, really wonderful, highly sophisticated. The problem with many of these strategies is they need time, or at least some equipment. Many of them need high intelligence or endless patience from the clinician and the patient. And some of them need great manual skills. And these are all aspects I personally don't have. Yeah, I have some equipment, but the rest, I'm not a very patient guy. My manual skills are really low level, and my intelligence is also just an average. And time is an issue for everybody of us, isn't it? So this is all these wonderful methods and great strategies. In real life, it's really hard to get them to work. So I personally have a skill gap here to use these methods. So and for me, and this is just a personal thing, for me it means done is better than good. So I can use MDT in my daily clinic, not only talk about it or hear about it, really use it in the daily clinic. So Marcia Spoto showed that it's the number one actually method used when it comes to lumbar spine, to lumbar spine treatment or assessment, for example. So it is feasible, it's doable in daily clinic. That's such an important aspect. So one thing is using it as a clinician. The other thing is, why do I still teach it? So teaching it in many countries all over the world. So when a PT is newly graduated, just ready with university or PT school, you have a lot of skills. You learn a lot of stuff, a lot of theory. The point is, it's really hard to get this in practice. The problem starts when a real patient enters your clinic. It's not just theory then. And many clinicians, they leave the job actually, burn out. They're just disappointed, frustrated, and they leave the job. So what can MDT do for these new clinicians, for these novice clinicians? I asked colleagues from my clinic, to what extent did the McKenzie training, the McKenzie education, change this, or to what extent did it help you?
Mir hat die McKenzie-Ausbildung einen Fahrplan gegeben. Seither habe ich einen roten Faden in meiner Behandlung, auch in der Untersuchung, und hilft mir einfach strukturierter voranzukommen und auch Erfolge zu erzielen.
Yes, a red thread in treatment and assessment, and gives patients responsibility. So it provides structure. That is what I hear all the time from students in my classes. It provides structure for their daily life as a clinician. And self-treatment. Self-treatment, no one can doubt the positive aspect of self-treatment. It's just a no-brainer. It makes sense that patients treat themselves. So when we look at our system, our principle of progression of forces, it just makes perfect sense. Not just in the reduction of a derangement, just in general when treating patients. Progression of forces, it's a safe thing, it's an effective thing, and it involves the patient again and again.
Jetzt kann ich schon mit dem Patienten in der ersten Sitzung das Problem aktiv angehen und den Patienten mit einbeziehen.
Yes, so shared decision making in the first session already. It's an active therapy, and no one can really doubt that this makes sense. In 2020, we introduced the drivers of pain and disability in our curriculum, and I think that was a major leap for our system. From now on, we really had a great tool to look at the whole patient. We did in the past, but we didn't have actually the tools kind of to describe it, kind of to document it. So when we now do patient assessment, we go through the whole process. We're not only on the right side with nociception and nervous system. So we also look at comorbidities, cognitive emotional factors, context factors. And so this brings us to a comprehensive diagnosis. So looking at these drivers of pain and disability, that was a great step in our educational process. And I think we are now really on top of this with our approach.
Sie hat mir sehr viel Struktur gebracht. Damit konnte ich besser planen, welche Schritte folgen aufeinander, und damit habe ich bessere Ergebnisse und auch mehr Spaß.
Yeah, so involving all these aspects at the end of the day brings you more fun in your job. You can enjoy the job. So the biopsychosocial in our system there's really no doubt about this now. So when you look at the number of search results on PubMed per year, just containing the term physiotherapy, you find a major increase over the last 50 years. So it's more than 10 times more research out there in physiotherapy than it was 50 years ago. So this is one point. So we have a high increase in research. What's the impact of this research? What is it with all these articles? Do they make a change in clinical practice? In 2021, Whiteley and colleagues, they published a really nice review on this. And what they found is clinicians, they don't use articles. They don't use literature to change their practice. They use course content and conversation with colleagues. So it's so important to have these courses, to offer these courses that can also be evaluated and therefore can offer a high quality standard. And I think that's what we do with our education. We are offering high quality education. So quality control, not only offering courses and teaching courses, but also taking care of the quality. We have the International Education Council, who kind of manages all the curricula and makes sure that what we teach is the same all over the world. High standard. Yeah, wonderful. So look at this list, and it's just, for sure, it's not extensive. It's just my personal list. It's my personal list why I use MDT. And there are some concluding thoughts I want to share with you. I'm traveling the world since many years, and I went to 4 World Physiotherapy Congresses. And what I learned, not only on these congresses, but also in communication with many other non-MDT clinicians, we are not the only ones in the world who care about patients. When I started my training more than 25 years ago, it really looked like, and it sounded like, the McKenzie guys are the only one who care for patients. And that's just not true. There are many other smart brains out there and dedicated people who really care about their patients, even they have never heard about or used the McKenzie system. So it makes sense to be somehow humble here. It's just one way to climb the mountain. It's not the only one. McKenzie is not the only way. It's not the only way to solve the MSK problem. if we can, I don't know. So at the end, it's all about the clinician and in communication with the patient. It's not the system. I think MDT can help you being a better clinician and achieve better outcomes. Oh yes, outcomes, that's another topic might come back maybe next time. So MDT can help you to use your potential as a clinician, as a human being in the exchange with your patient. It's not the system, but the system can help you to be a great clinician. So, thinking back about this, of course, I'm biased. I'm on the right side here, and I'm aware of the left side, of course. But we all have to be aware that we are biased. We have our confirmation bias, and it's fine. We just have to be aware of it. So, I would ask you now again to stick your heads together for maybe this time only 2 minutes. It's way shorter. And just tell your neighbor, was there a new aspect for you in what I just did or what I just presented? And just share it with your neighbor. And Eva, Mirek, or whoever, please stop the video at this point for 2 minutes. Okay, so was there a new aspect? Yeah, so you can share actually in the break later or tonight with some drinks what aspects you found here, or maybe what aspect you might add to this, and you can just send it to me, and I'm happy to add it to my list of why I use MDT, or maybe why people use MDT. And here's again the link, the QR code to my article, and feel free to use it and just deliver it to whoever you want and translate it or whatever. Enjoy it. And thanks a lot. It was my pleasure to be with you. Unfortunately, only in the digital world here, not in person. And I hope to be back in the Czech Republic at some point in the future. And just thinking back about this international experience and international aspects, keep in mind the next Congress in Tokyo, 2025. It's really worth to go there. So save the date, end of May 2025. So take care. It was my pleasure to be with you. And thanks again for the invitation.